Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Los Alamos. My name is Elisa Enriquez, and I'm a worship associate here. Our minister, Reverend John Cullinan, is off today, but I have the great pleasure of introducing Renae Mitchell, who's our guest speaker. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person and the interconnection of us all. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are at this moment and wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. If you're joining for the first time, we invite you to talk to Reverend Tina DeYoe. She is our Director of Religious Education. And you also be able to talk to her after the service. Today we will have a forum right after service. You'll hear more about that in the announcements, but it starts at 11:45. You can also have just food, drink, and coffee. Let's settle in, take a deep breath, and let's start our service. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. Please join in our first hymn, number 170. of our church. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To seek peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. You may be seated. Candles of community have been lit today in gratitude for those doing the difficult work toward justice, and for everyone who works diligently to make this church community flourish. Do you have a reading before we have a moment of silence? Toni Morrison, from her book, The Source of Self-Regard, which she published months before she passed away in 2019. I never met Reverend King. My memory of him is print-bound, electronic, through the narratives of other people. Yet, I felt this personal responsibility to him. He did that to people. I realized later that I was responding to something other and more durable than the complex personhood of King. Not to the preacher he was, or the scholar he was, or the vulnerable human being, not to the political strategist, the orator, the brilliant risk-taking activist. I was responding to his mission, his, as he coined it, audacious faith, his expectation of transforming, appending cosmic elegy into a psalm of brotherhood, his confidence that we were finer than we thought, that there were moral grounds we would not abandon, lines of civil behavior we simply would not cross, that there were things we would gladly give up for the public good, that a comfortable life, resting on the shoulders of other people's misery, was an abomination to this country. Please join in a moment of silence.
Good morning. My name is Tina DeYoe, and I'm the Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at this church, as many of you know, and I use she, her pronouns. And please join me right now in this time of meditation, prayer, reflection on words that Renae Mitchell wrote for us today. So ground yourself, ground your feet, breathe, take in some breaths as we enter into this time of meditation. Spirit of life and love, we call to mind the life of a man of peace and resistance, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We continue to see and hear the devaluing of people of color, of those with disabilities, of women, of immigrants. This list, incomplete as it is especially meaningful today. At times, we are overwhelmed and despair that in the face of oppression, violence, and injustice, our actions, work, and faith seem so incredibly small. Dr. King reminds us that one person really can change the world. We hold fast to our values because we carry hope in our hearts that together we can dismantle systems of oppression. However thin our resilience may be wearing, we do not give up or give in. We see our friends and neighbors marching together in body or spirit because we must not give up. May we have the strength to do what must be done in this world. May we find the courage to live in conviction, in spirit, in faith. May we know justice and peace in our time. We will not rest until equity is made more real for all of us, present or absent. Spirit of life, we look within our own hearts where our hope for the world lives, where our faith in humanity resides, and there we find the strength and courage to keep moving forward. And let us join together in our meditation hymn. Oh, now it's on. I would like to invite all the young and young at heart to come up here closer. You can sit on the rug for a Time for All Ages message. So, yeah, thanks for coming up. Woo, yay, Ren. Cool. All right. So, and Renae, are you able to do the clicker or someone, or I can do it? Okay. I know. So we're talking this morning about Renae's going to talk about Black mothers who have changed the world. And maybe some of you all know some of these folks already, but we're going to kind of highlight a few, just a few. There's a lot more, right, in our history. So how many of you have heard of Sojourner Truth? Yeah, maybe some of you. So Sojourner was a Black mother, and she was also a preacher and an abolitionist, which means she wanted to abolish slavery, right? So that was Sojourner Truth. She was born into slavery, but she escaped. She is the first Black woman to sue a white man and win her son's freedom. She also gave a very famous speech on behalf of women's rights where she famously said, "Ain't I a woman?" So Sojourner had 5 kids. So that's Sojourner up there. Then we have Ruby Bridges. Yes? Ruby Bridges, raise your hand. Have you heard? Yeah? So yeah. Was the first child to attend a class in school that had been desegregated. That means that black children and white children were taught in the same classroom together. That first year of school, Ruby had to be escorted to class by federal marshals every single day because many people protested having integrated schools. Eventually, though, schools were no longer segregated, which all started with little Ruby. That was when she was little. And then after she grew up, Ruby became a mom and had 3 children, and that is her today. So Ruby is awesome. Misty Copeland. How many have heard of Misty Copeland? Yes. So Misty is famous for being the first black woman to be the principal, the lead dancer, at the very famous American Ballet Theater. She just had a baby last year, and his name is Jackson. Kamala Harris. Our vice president, whoop whoop, is the first black and Asian woman to serve as vice president. She has 2 stepchildren, and they sometimes call her Mamala. Yep. And Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Who has heard of Frances Ellen Watkins Harper? She is a famous Unitarian mother, and she was also an abolitionist, so fought against slavery. She was an orator, a poet. She wrote lots of poetry. There's really awesome poems that she's written. Suffragist, so she fought for the right for women to vote, and a novelist. She toured around to numerous states, speaking, reading her poetry, and delivering her message of civil rights for all people. And like I said, she was a Unitarian. She went to a Unitarian church in Philadelphia as an adult. So Harper, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, she gave up her lecture circuit to raise her daughter. And after her husband died, she and her daughter returned to Philadelphia so she could resume her public speaking career. She traveled throughout the South, speaking on education, civil rights, temperance, domestic reform, and the need to bring an end to the practice of lynching. She was also involved in helping with the Underground Railroad, which helped slaves escape from the South to the North. And she was the first black woman to publish a novel and a short story. And like I said, she attended the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia. So those are just some of our black mothers who have changed the world. And we're going to hear about one more today, very important, which Renae is going to tell us more about. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mother. What? Yeah, she was a mom. Yeah, Coretta Scott King was also a mom, and she was married to Martin Luther King Jr. So, yeah, that's our Time for All Ages this morning. Thank you for coming up. And I also have a little book here that I made a while back, and it has more about Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. So you can take this book at the intention table and do some activities and learn more about Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, too.
Beautiful as always. So thank you all for coming today. Personal stories can shape our understanding of history, and I'd like to share one of mine. My father was a man driven by racist ideology, and as a white supremacist, he didn't see his marriage to my brown Honduran mother as a loving bond between equal human beings. My mother was a woman who, despite facing abuse and indignities, would remind my siblings and me that no one should have the power to dictate the direction of our lives. Witnessing my mother's experience is in part why I chose to talk about one of the most important women in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, his mother. Though her marriage and family were intensely loving and supportive, the abuses and indignities she faced were systemic. Yet this remarkable woman raised her children in a way that inspired them to change their world. While I stand before you as someone who does not share the same racial or cultural experiences as Alberta Williams King or many other Black mothers, my own family history has given me a distinct understanding of the impact of racial injustice and the power of maternal influence. I'd like to reflect not only on Alberta Williams King's individual journey, but on the profound influence she had on her son, a leader who would go on to shape the course of history and whom we memorialize today. Their stories intertwine, and by learning about her history, we get a deeper understanding of his. The context of Alberta Williams King's life echoed the history of Black motherhood in the United States. We could go back as far as the period of slavery in the US to trace the history that led to Alberta's experience. The motivation for the exploitation and denigration of Black mothers, however, always remained the same and remains the same. According to feminist scholar Bell Hooks, the political aim of this abuse of Black women by white males was to obtain absolute allegiance and obedience to the white imperialistic order, end quote. Bell Hooks argues that this insistence on the imperialistic order has continued to the present day, but manifested in the public and media spaces, particularly during the Civil Rights era, a moment of exceptional resistance to this order. During the early 20th century, in the post-emancipation period, Black women as a whole were belittled for choosing to become mothers and were blamed for the injustices they experienced. Only 7 years before Alberta Williams' birth in 1904, the court case Plessy versus Ferguson upheld state-mandated racial segregation. In that same year, the president of the Missouri Press Association published an infamous letter gaslighting Black women for the victimization they endured in their, quote, lack of morality. A year after Alberta's birth, a much-discussed newspaper article justifying abuses against Black people insisted that an educated Black person, Black women in particular, were unnatural. Racism permeated the White House and constitutional law. In 1905, President Theodore Roosevelt delivered a speech called On American Motherhood, where he insisted that declining birth rates among white women was a form of race suicide. And if you'd like to learn more about that topic, see my previous talk. In 1920, the 19th Amendment was passed, providing women the right to vote, though Black women continued to face restrictions and threats that prevented them from exercising this right. And it was in this environment that Alberta Williams was raised. Again, she was born in 1904 in Georgia, daughter of one of the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church's earliest pastors, Adam Williams, and his spouse, Jenny Celeste. Jenny and Adam both pursued activism in their church, supporting Black businesses and individuals in their community in spite of violence and threats. The street on which the church was built, Auburn Avenue, became, as newspapers put it, the richest Negro street in the world, and was the most targeted for racist violence during Alberta's lifetime. When Alberta was 2 years old, the 1906 race massacre occurred in Atlanta, her hometown. For 3 days, terrorist mobs set fire to black businesses and residential areas and committed numerous murders. This horrific event did not stop Alberta's parents from helping found an NAACP chapter in Atlanta, helping establish the first black high school in Atlanta, and leading boycotts against businesses that disparaged black Atlanta residents. Alberta witnessed her parents' activism taking part when she could. She later attended Spelman Seminary, a school that allowed her to cultivate her love of music and reading, a love that she later passed on to her children. With her parents' encouragement, she completed higher education, receiving a teaching certificate and bachelor's degree. Alberta's dream as a young, educated woman was to teach, in spite of the environment in which she would be teaching. And while she was a student, she met a man named Michael King, whose given name would later change to Martin Luther. This man had suffered abuses due to racist violence, and he had escaped from rural Georgia to Atlanta, hoping to find opportunities to become a pastor. Alberta and Martin Luther met and fell in love, but Alberta's parents insisted that she complete her education and begin her career before getting married, since a law called the marriage bar would restrict her from teaching once she was married. And can I just see a show of hands? Has anyone heard of this marriage bar? You have? Yeah? Oh, okay, a few of you have. Yeah. I want to talk to you after. I have questions. Thus, Alberta and Martin Luther had to wait years before they could get married with Alberta's parents' approval, which they finally did in 1926. According to the book Three Mothers by scholar and writer Anna Malika Tubbs, Alberta believed strongly in the empowerment brought about by education. During this time, Alberta insisted that Martin Luther complete his education. She even tutored him to help him earn the degrees he would need to eventually accept a pastorship at Alberta's parents' church, Ebenezer Baptist. In this way, Alberta was enormously influential on Martin's life and career, constantly pushing him to achieve more. They became partners in the church and in activism. Alberta eventually gave birth to a daughter and 2 sons. One of these sons, Martin Luther King Jr., whom I'll refer to as MLK, was a sensitive, observant child. When his father took him to a shoe store because young MLK Jr. wanted new shoes very badly, and can you imagine how adorable, he also wanted a new suit, and he was about 12. They left without the shoes, though, because the storekeeper insisted that they try the shoes on in the back. Another time, MLK Jr. was in the car with his father when they were pulled over by a police officer who called Martin Luther Sr. a boy. He verbally defied this insult, a risky business, as we all know, and was witnessed doing so by his son. And in each of these instances, and many others, according to his autobiography, MLK Jr. would come home and seek the reassurance of his mother. To quote MLK Jr., "She tried to explain the divided system of the South as a social condition rather than a natural order. She made it clear that she opposed this system and that I must never allow it to make me feel inferior. Then she said the words that almost every Negro hears before he can yet understand the injustice that makes them necessary. You are as good as anyone." Thus, with every injustice that he witnessed or experienced, MLK Jr.'s mother never failed to remind him that he was fully and equally as human as those who oppressed them. Largely because of the importance his mother placed on education, MLK Jr. went on to not only earn a college degree, but a doctorate. While he was in school, MLK Jr. wrote often to his mother. He depended on her and showed his love for her by never skipping phone calls. He completed his doctorate in 1955, which happened to be the year that the civil rights movement began. But though his first act in the movement began that year, another individual is credited for truly starting the movement: a Black mother. When Alberta was in her 50s and MLK was 26, a Black teenager named Emmett Till was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered in 1955 by a group of white men who saw the boy as being insolent for daring to raise his eyes to a white woman. The local sheriff in Mississippi ordered that Emmett's body must be buried right away there in Mississippi without consulting his family. The quicker he was buried, the quicker the whole incident would be forgotten. Emmett's mother, Mamie Till, though devastated, insisted that her son, or his body, be brought to her in Chicago, and I could spend an entire talk on how she had to fight to get his body back. His coffin arrived sealed. Oh, thank you. His coffin arrived sealed with orders that it should not be opened. And though she was later accused of exhibiting improper motherly behavior, Mamie Till insisted that the casket be opened and that the world see what was done to her son. The signs of torture were unmistakable, and many in the nation demanded justice. Days later, the murderers were ruled not guilty. And months later, they all admitted that they had indeed carried out this terrible act. The outrage was unprecedented, and the actions of this mother sparked what we now refer to as the Civil Rights Movement. And less than 3 months later, the now Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led the famous Montgomery bus boycott, a 13-month protest against racial segregation in Alabama, and one of the most influential actions of the Civil Rights Movement. I remembered this time. MLK Jr. found himself on numerous picket lines and in prison cells. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested at least 29 times in his life, which he considered the cost of marching. But he was marked for arrest wherever he went, not primarily because of the marches, but because he was clearly becoming one of the greatest political speakers of recent American history, drawing enormous crowds and gaining increasing numbers of supporters from one rally to the next. With this growing fame, MLK Jr. never forgot his mother. He even compared his work to the labor of motherhood. In a 1962 diary from jail, he wrote, "It is something like the mother giving birth to a child, in spite of the fact that she realizes that beneath her pain is the emergence of life in a radiant infant. She experiences the agony right on. So is the jail experience." Okay. MLK Jr. had already started a family when his house was bombed. He was stabbed while at a book signing. He experienced so many threats to his life, and each time he called his mother to let her know he was okay. His concern for his mother's mental health was significant. His father wrote about one instance after dinner shortly before MLK Jr.'s death, when he turned to Alberta and said, "There's a chance, Mother, that someone is going to try to kill me, and it could happen without any warning at all," end quote. And as we know, MLK Jr. stated in his final speech, "I've been to the mountaintop, I've seen the promised land," and go ahead and let him tell you.
We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
(1968). As author Anna Malika Tubbs writes in her book, Black mothers like Alberta Williams King, Mamie Till, and so many others did not and do not even have the privilege to mourn their children's death in private and have to grapple with the injustice of these tragedies before news cameras to let the world know that this injustice continues. MLK's work and sacrifices led to so many positive changes, but as we see from the tragic deaths of Trayvon Martin, Oscar Grant, Michael Brown, and so many others who were killed while unarmed, Black individuals and people of color more broadly still face systemic injustices. The mothers of the men I mentioned, Sabrina Fulton, Wanda Johnson, Leslie McSpadden, are three of several African-American mothers who have formed a group called Mothers of the Movement.
We've got some difficult days.
Yep, after that. There we go. These are the Mothers of the Movement, the members of which still fight, against the police brutality, gun violence, and systemic racism that caused their children to be killed. In spite of these tragedies, there are small signs of hope for the future. The promised land, as MLK Jr. said, remains in sight. The current pastor of MLK Jr.'s family church, Ebenezer Baptist, and current U.S. Senator of Georgia, Dr. Raphael Warnock, named one of his greatest influences as his mother. He stated that, quote, "Because this is America, the 82-year-old hands that used to pick somebody else's cotton went to the polls and picked her youngest son to be a United States Senator." There's an understanding that these mothers had about the world in which we all live that I think may be encapsulated by writer Roxane Gay. She famously wrote in an essay published in 2020, "Remember, no one is coming to save us." She said, "Some white people act as if there are two sides of racism, as if racists were people we need to reason with." End quote. We, as Unitarian Universalists, believe in each person's inherent worth and dignity, and within this belief, there is no room for reasoning with racism. So let us be moved by this reminder to do what we can to forward Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. Primarily, vote, join collective movements like yesterday's event in Albuquerque, do service for others, educate yourself, and remain resilient. And so, as we move forward and carry out this necessary work, on this and every Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, I ask each of you to remember not only the brilliant and courageous icon for whom this holiday is named, but also his mother, whose values radiated through the actions of her son. May it be so. Thank you so much, Renae.
Today's plate offering will go to the Española Pathways Shelter. 100% of today's giving will go to them. If you'd like, you can also give through the Givelify app, and somebody wonderful must have put the Givelify app up there, so you can take your phone and do that if you'd like. May what you give you joy. All right, and announcements can be found in the back of the order of service, but I'll just go ahead and mention a few, and you can see right in front of you. Today at 11:45, we're going to have a forum, and it's the summarization and presentation of the past fall's listening circles and the church revitalization process. I encourage especially church members to attend if you can. And thank you for all the hard work that's been done with the revitalization process to date. We also have a women's circle, Embracing Balance, tonight at 7. It's via Zoom, and you can contact Jen Jordan if you'd like additional information. There's the Social Justice Book Club meeting tomorrow, and that's with Evan Rose. It's at 7 p.m. Continuing discussions about the 1619 Project, a new origin story by Nicole Hannah-Jones. The Elementary Kids Overnight Friendship Retreat, January 27th and 28th. See the voice for the link to register, or talk to the director of our Life Standard Religious Education, Tina DeYoe, Reverend Tina. And there's the QR code. So that QR, thank you. That QR code, there's like 4 QR codes, I think, up there today. That one is to register your kids for that retreat. That sounds like really cool fun. And if I had little kids, I think I'd put them in there. So, and the announcements don't even include in February, I think there's going to be a parents' night out as well. So there's also singer-songwriter Joe Hanks coming Sunday, January 28th. So you can join Joe Hanks at the church for a full day of music and worship. It says full day here. I don't know if that's true. It's so I think it's at 4 p.m. on that date. And then also, it is up there. Okay, great. And then the Coming of Age for Adults class, led by Reverend Tina DeYoe, also is that the QR code for that registration, Tina?
Yeah, that's the QR code.
Okay, so.
That's going to be co-facilitated by me and John.
Okay, and that's with Tina DeYoe and John Collinen. So, wow, it's a lot of stuff going on. So, thank you. All right. Well, today, I feel very blessed to have been able to be worship associate today because I really respect Renae, and her sermon was fantastic, or homily, or speaking event, whatever you want to call it. This is where I get confused sometimes, having grown up Catholic, becoming a Unitarian Universalist, not knowing what to call what we experience sometimes. Let's join together and lift every voice and sing. Page 131. 149.
Well, as a former college teacher, you all have your homework assignment. So go out and do good work, go in self-reflection, and go in peace.